Uh, all right. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So, right now I would like to continue reading my novel, reading Alice in the Wonderland novel, and we move to second chapter right now. So let's get started. So, chapter two, the pool of tears. Curiouser and curiouser, cried Alice. She was so much surprised that for a moment she quite forgot how to speak good English. Then, opening out like the largest telescope that ever was. Goodbye, Fate. For when she looked down at her feet, they seemed to be almost out of sight. They were getting so far off. Oh, my poor little feet, I wonder who will put on your shoes and stockings for you now, dears? I'm sure I shan't be able. I shall be great deal too far off to trouble myself about you. You must manage the best way you can, but I must be kind to them, thought Alice. Or perhaps they will walk the way I want to go. Let me see. I'll give them a new pair of boots every Christmas. So Alice, or perhaps they won't walk the way I want to go. Let me see. I'll give them a new pair of boots every Christmas. And she went on planning herself would manage it. They must go by the carriage thought. And how funny it'll seem sending presents to one's own feet and how odd the direction will look. Iris Whitefoot asked Hard Rock near the fender with Alice Long. Oh dear, what a nonsense I'm talking. At this moment, her head struck against the roof of the wall. In fact, she was no more than 9 feet high, and she at once took up the little golden key and hurried off to the garden door. Poor Alice! That was much as she could do, lying down on the side to look through into the garden with one eye, but to get through was more hopeless than ever. She sat down and began to cry again. You ought to be ashamed of yourself, said Alice. A great girl like you, she might well say this. To go on crying this way. Stop this moment, I tell you. But she went on all the same, shedding gallons of tears until a large pool around her about 4 inches deep and reaching half down the hall. After a time, she heard a little pattering of feet in the distance, and she hastily dried her eyes to see what was coming. It was White Rabbit returning, splendid dress, with a pair of white kid gloves in one hand and a large fan in the other. He came trotting along in a great hurry, muttering to himself as he came, "Oh, the Dutch, the Dutch! Oh, won't she be savage if I've kept her waiting?" Alice felt so desperate that she was ready to ask help of anyone. So see the rabbit come near her, she began in a low, timid voice. "If you please, sir." The rabbit started violently, dropped the white kid gloves and the fan, and scurried away into the darkness as hard she could go. Alice, Alice took up the fan and gloves, and as hall was very hot, she kept finding herself all the time she went on talking. Dear, dear, how queer everything is today. And yesterday things went on just as usual. I wonder I've been changed in the night. Let me think. Was I always the same when I got up this morning? I almost think I can remember feeling a little different, but I'm not the same. The next question is, where in the world am I? Ah, that's a great puzzle. And she began thinking of all the children she knew that were of the same age as herself, to see if she could have been changed for any of them. I'm sure, I'm sure I'm not Ada, she said, for her hair goes in such long ringlets, and mine doesn't go in ringlets at all. And I'm sure I can be Mabel, for I know all sort of things, and oh, she knows such a very little besides she, and I, and oh dear, how puzzling it all is. I'm trying to know, I think I used to know. Let me see, four times five is 12, and four times six is 13, and four times seven is, oh dear, I should never get to 20 at that rate. However, the multiple the multiple tables don't signify signify. Let's try geography. London is capital of Paris, and Paris is capital of Rome, and Rome. No, that's all wrong. I'm certain Romans have been changed from Babel. I try and say, hold on to later. And she covered her with love as she was saying lessons and began to repeat it, but her voice sounded hoarse and strange, and the words did not come in the same way as they do. How doth a little boy let him of his shining tail and pulls of the nail on every golden scale, how cheerful season to grin, how neatly spreads his claves, and welcome little fishes in with gently smiling japes. I'm sure those are not the right things for, said poor Alice, and her eyes filled with tears again, and as she went on, I must remember after all, and I shall have to go and leave that portkey in a house and have next to no toys to play with, and oh, that was a real lesson to learn. No, I've made up my mind about it. I'm Mabel. I stayed on here. There'll be no use they putting their hats down and saying, come on again, dear. I shall only look up and say, who am I then? Tell me that first, and then if I like being that person, I'll come up. If not, I'll stay down here until I'm somebody else, but oh dear, cried Alice with a sudden burst of tears. I do wish they could put their hats down. I'm so very tired of being all alone here. As she said, she looked down at her hand and surprised to see that have she put on one of the rabbits. She knew what it was she talking. How can I do that? She thought. I'm sure we'll be growing small again. She got up and went to the table, measured herself by it, and found that as nearly as she could guess, she was now about 2 feet high and was going to shrink rapidly. She soon found out that the cause of this was the fan she was holding, and she dropped it hastily, just in time to save herself from shrinking away altogether. That was a narrow escape, said Alice. I could dare frightened at the thought, all at the sudden change, but very glad to find herself still in existence. And now for the garden, and ran with all speed back to the little door. But Alice, the little door was shut again, and a little golden key was lying on the glass table as before, and things are worse than ever, thought the poor child. For I never was so small as this before, never. And I declare it's too bad that it is. As she said the word was up, as she said this word, her foot slipped. In another moment, splash! She was up to her chin in salt water. The first idea was that she had somehow fallen into the sea. In that case, I can go back by railway, she said to herself. Alice had been to the seaside on her life and had come to the general conclusion that wherever you go to on the English coast, you find a number of bathing machines in the sea. Some children dig in the sand with wooden spades, then a row of lodging houses, and behind them are railway stations. However, she soon made out that she was in the pool of tears which she had wept when she was 9 feet high. I wish I hadn't cried so much, said Alice, as she swam about trying to find her way out. I shall be punished for it now, I suppose. being drowned in on my own tears. That will be three things to be sure. However, everything is free today. Just then, she had something splashing about in the pool with a way of, and she swam near to make out what it is. And first, she thought it must be walrus hippopotamus, but then she remembered how small she was now, and she soon made out that it was only mouse that slipped away in like herself. Would it be of any use now, thought Alice, to speak to his mouse, to this mouse? Everything is so odd all the way down here that I should think very likely that it can talk. And anyway, there's no harm in trying, so she began, oh, mouse, do you know the way out of this pool? I'm very tired of swimming about here, almost. Alice thought this must be right way of speaking to a mouse. She had never done such a thing before. But she remembered having seen in her brother Latin grammar a mouse of a mouse to a mouse, a mouse, a mouse. Oh, mouse. The mouse looked at her with inquisitively and seemed to hold her to wing with one or a little eyes. But it said nothing. Perhaps it doesn't understand English, thought Alice. I dare say of his French mouse come over it in William the Conqueror. For without knowledge of his story, Alice had no very clear notions how long ago anything with what had happened. So she began again, or as my child, which is the most sentence in her French lesson book. The mouse gave a sudden leap out of the water and seemed to quiver all over with fright. Oh, I beg your pardon, cried Alice hastily. I felt that she not had hurt the poor animal's feelings. I quite forgot you didn't like cats. Not like cats, cried the mouse in a shrill, passionate voice. Would you like cats if you were me? Well, perhaps not, said Alice in shooting tone. Not being angry about it, and yet I wish I could show you our cat dinner. I think you'd take fancy of cat as you only see her. She's such a dear, quiet thing, Alice went on, half to herself as she was half lazy about in a pool and she was pouring necessary by the fire, licking her paws and washing her face. And she's such a nice, soft thing to nurse, and she's such a capital one of catching mice. Oh, I beg your pardon, cried Alice again. But this time was bracing all over and she laughed certainly it must be really offended. We won't talk about her anymore if you'd rather not. Indeed, cried the mouse, who was trembling down to the end of his tail. As if I would talk on such object. Our family always hate cats. Nasty, low, forget things. Don't let me hear about that name again. I would indeed, said Alice, and I kept her to change the conversation. Are you fond of dogs? The mouse did not answer, so Alice went eagerly. There's a little dog near our house. I should like to show you. A little bright eyed teddy, with oh, such long curly brown hair. And it will fetch things when you throw them. And it'll sit up on a bag its dinner and shut of things. I can remember half of them. And it belongs to a farmer, I have to say it's so useful. It's 100 pounds. He said it kills off rats. Oh dear, cried Alice in a sorrowful tone. I'm offended it again. For the most was swimming away from her as fast as she could, as making quite commotions, and a poor as she went. So she cut softly after it. Most dear, do come back again, and we will talk about cats and dog either, if you don't like them. When the mouse heard this, it turned around and swam slowly back to her. Its face was quite pale, but patient and starts, and it says in a low, trembling voice, let us get to this shore, and I'll tell you my history, and you'll understand why it is I had cats and dogs. It was high time to go, for the pool was getting quite crowded with the birds and animals that had fallen into it. There was a duck and a dodo, a lorry and eaglet. and several other curious creatures. Alice led the way, and the whole party swam to the shore. That's all about the chapter 2. We will move on the next video with the chapter 3. Thank you so much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.